Good morning. Thank you for that wonderful prelude. Imagine is one of my favorite songs by John Lennon. And this morning we will have Sunny Lula and Larry Vita and John Mowbray as inclusion performing all the music, playing for us this morning. And I think we might have Paula Despang singing and Janet Levens during the interlude and offering. So we're blessed to have talented members and that like to get up and do things on Sunday morning. So welcome to our University Unitarian Universalist Fellowship for this Sunday morning. It's wonderful to see everyone here. We've got quite a few new faces this morning, which is also wonderful. So be sure and spend a little time after service getting to know each other. So we always start with committee moments. If we have team leaders or committee chairs or event planners that are doing something pertinent for the church, please come up and tell us all about it. And here's Lori, hospitality.
Hi, Lori Streel. Many of you took advantage of the offer I gave 2 weeks ago, and there's only a few slots open this month for people to help with coffee and one for snacks. But next month, everyone could do what they wanted to do. So please, the sheet will be up there. If you like coffee, please come. It's not an onerous job, particularly if we can get 2 people volunteering. The other thing is, somebody left a bag of clothes in the kitchen. It's been there 3 weeks. If you want to claim it, claim it. Otherwise, we're going to have to find a home for it.
Is any of it a size 6?
You may check that out on your own.
Thank you very much.
I thought it was dish towels, and I was just like, why isn't someone putting these away? And then so I opened it to put them away, and I'm like, oh, never mind.
John Mowbray on behalf of Facilities and Grounds. Just want to thank some folks for coming out yesterday and helping out around the outside and inside. I hope I have everybody.
We'll let you know.
Okay. So we had Ken Westerlin and Cindy.
Cindy Bear.
Thank you. Barry London. Dave Simons, Lorraine Williams, Martha Kirby, Derek Catlin, Lori Strell, and Kelly, who can introduce herself next.
Yeah.
Thanks.
We got a lot done. You should check out the closets. We've had people working on them for a month now, and they're actually, you can find stuff and know what it is. And admire the front. Weeds are gone. Flowers have been pruned. It just looks gorgeous. And our sign.
And our sign.
And our sign that we got up yesterday.
Good morning, Kelly Buchanan, chair of the marketing committee. I'm looking over and seeing Sylvia and John.
Yay.
Nice to see you. I'm sorry you caught me by surprise, but nice to see you. So I'm here on behalf of the marketing chair, and I just want to thank John Mowbray for his help yesterday in putting up our sign to welcome Reverend Tracy. It's been a couple of months in planning, and we finally got it up. We understand that it's long overdue, that she's been with us for about a year now. But due to COVID and just all of us being able to come together to put a sign, to get more people in, we feel the time was appropriate. So thank you, John, and the marketing committee. Just a few other things I'd like to mention about marketing. We have these, this is also membership too, but we have these cups, and if you would like to take a few with you, we have the cups up here. Just asking for a donation of kind, maybe of 50 cents, $1. Just take whatever you'd like, especially if you're new to the congregation. You get to take one home for free. So anyhow, we have these.
You do want to let them know. It does say society.
It does.
We voted about a year and a half, maybe 2 years. I don't know. We changed to fellowship.
Right.
Because it just sounded more warm and welcoming. But these are still great cups. Right. They hold coffee.
And so the next thing I want to say is, if you're new to us here today, or if it's been a while that you haven't been here in a while, I just want to introduce to you this kind of brochure that says "Making a Home," in Unitarian Universalism. And it talks about, what we do. We live with a loving heart. We live with an open mind. and we live with helping hands. So if you're new to us and you're considering making us your home, we've got some brochures at the front. Please take a look at those. Appreciate it. And my last, now I'm on the book club. Kelly
we
Buchanan,
wear a lot of hats.
just, trying to keep the congregational read together. And we had a great response for this particular book, and it's called An Indigenous Peoples History of the United States by Roxanne Dunbar Ortiz. It was the winner in 2019 of the Congregational Read at UUA, and we're just really excited to start diving into this book. It's written from the perspective of the American Native Indians. It's from their perspective, their history, not what we have written in the history book. So we're excited to get into this. Thank you very much.
I know some of you have heard that I have sworn I would never be the chairman of any committee, and I'm not, so there. But I'm here to present to you a whole other idea. This is a craft idea, so there you go. I was talking to Reverend Tracy a couple of weeks ago, and she was telling me about having gone to GA and a few other places and experiencing stole envy. Now, different people envy different things that other people have, and she's seen some really beautiful stoles that ministers wear hanging over their shoulders and down. And so she was describing some of those to me, and I said, you know what you're talking about? She says, they're terribly expensive. I said, yes, because what you're describing is very labor intensive. But I have an idea for one. And so I explained to her what I was talking about with reference to something she had described. And so I would like to make her a stole. I'll do the labor, but I want you to get engaged in it too. So here's the plan. You're going to provide me with satin ribbon. You can get satin ribbon at Michael's or at Joann's. Thank you. See, when I lose parts of my memory, there are people here to help me. Appreciate that. Places like that. It should be the kind that's shiny satin on both sides. And you can get it from skinny. Don't get it real skinny. That makes it harder for me to work with. Or you can get it wider. And what I'm going to do with it is run it in two different directions and weave it together. And I'm looking for colors that are the colors of the Crayolas in the original 8 crayon per box, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Let's go
Like
with
the
those.
rainbow?
Like a rainbow. Yes.
Like for Pride Month, which we're not still in, but we're always in.
It comes back, but it keeps coming back too. And I believe in people being proud of who they are all the time anyway. So that's where we're at. That's where I'm at with that, and that's where she's at with that too. So if you would like to participate in that, slip me a length of satin ribbon, or if you want to contribute cash to that, you can, because there will be some actual fabric needed to create this. It has to be stitched onto a piece of fabric, and then I have to put some backing on the back of it and all that. Yes, ma'am.
What about length? What length are you kind of looking for? 1 foot of this, 2 feet of the ribbon?
I need 2 feet of anything, because it's going to run diagonally, and I'm not sure exactly how wide it'll be and what we'll need. So if you have stashes of ribbon at your house, let's have some fun with that. But this will be real fabric ribbon. This will not be the paper ribbon that we use for Christmas presents. Thank you very much.
And you don't want patterns, just plain colors?
Not patterns, please. Plain
Okay,
color.
No patterns. Okay.
Okay?
Sounds like fun.
Something to get involved with. And here's hoping it'll turn out as beautiful as it is in my mind.
I'm sure that it will. I'm sure that it will. All right, it looks like we're clear for announcements. So let's ring the bell again and settle in to our shared sacred space this morning. I ask that you turn off any, thing that might ring or buzz or otherwise disrupt us. And let's enjoy this time together. I will say now that when we do Joys and Concerns, at this moment in time, they are still streamed live. So they're going out to the universe, whoever's listening. So just keep that in mind as you share what might be on your heart when you're offered the opportunity later this morning. So our topic today is immigration and children. And it's something that I think about a lot from personal experience with friends and just from watching the news for years of how many people are displaced in our world. So my opening words this morning were written by the Reverend Erica A. Hewitt, who is one of my heroes. She does a lot of worship stuff with the UUA. She's an incredible writer. So her words this morning are, seeking mercy, seeking home. This was written during the beginning of the Syrian refugee crisis and remains full of meaning today. For many reasons, people depart. They leave home or the places given to them in place of home that might have been lost to war and seek refuge from 1,000 dangers and uncertainties. For many reasons, many of them inconceivable to us who live in relative peace and prosperity, people can't stay where they are, in the places they know. So for themselves and for their children, they trade the hell they know for the unknown and the foreign. For many reasons, unimaginable to me and maybe to you too, people give up their sense of belonging. They surrender the climate and food and sounds and smells that their bodies have always known for the new, the unfamiliar, the harsh and unlearnable. What deep respect these refugees, asylees, and immigrants deserve for their courage, for their capacity to keep moving forward toward hope. Some members of our human family are throwing their arms wide to welcome those seeking mercy and seeking home. Others are nearly taking up arms to drive them away. It's a painful territory that stretches between the merciful and the damned. As a minister, which she is, not me, I'm in the business of holding up important truths as I see it and naming how those truths intersect with the news on our screens. As the Syrian refugee crisis unfolds, I've had to remind myself of two things. Those of us who call ourselves Americans are all, to some degree, complicit in the unstable geopolitical disasters that result in such vast human suffering. And to adjudicate and assess which refugees are deserving of mercy and which ones aren't is to exhibit an arrogance so dehumanizing that it borders on dangerous. When human suffering comes spilling over our borders, there is no clear division between them and us. Our country's own policies are culpable, and by extension, us. We have protected our American lifestyle of consumption and corporate rule. We play a role in inequality and ecological disasters and wars over dwindling resources. Every time we lose sight of the fact that we are powerful players in a fragile but wildly interconnected global community, which is often. We've lost a bit of our soul. That's what fear does. Fear is a voice that says nothing matters more than self-preservation and self-importance. Fear drains the antifreeze out of your heart, so your compassion center runs cold. It cuts off the feeding tubes that keep our souls supple and our morality intact. And fear, I think, is what's at the heart of the stingy fool's game of deciding which immigrants are deserving of asylum. Fear says, from my comfortable position of privilege, I will decide whose hell is raw and terrifying enough to merit compassion. What would it be like, I wonder, to choose another path? How much would it cost us to invoke the principles of our faith and the beating heart of our ethical lives by saying, we are a single, interconnected human family. We make one stronger and braver by sharing what we have. All people have the same worth and the same inherent dignity, and no human being is illegal. The suffering of people beyond our borders asks us to examine how we've created the conditions for its existence. Some of you, undoubtedly and admirably, are wondering what you can do to help bring relief to the Syrian refugee crisis. I hope you're hearing that doing something starts small. You're doing something when you allow your heart to tear over the scope of human suffering. You're doing something when you step beyond your experience to acknowledge that we cannot know, and God willing, will never know, what it's like to make harrowing decisions. You're doing something when you interrupt a conversation to say, no human being is illegal. It's not kind or civil to talk about people that way. And you're doing enough when you use the language of reverence and interdependence to describe the global community. For many reasons, people depart. They leave home or the place that was given to them in place of a homeland that might have been lost to war, and seek refuge from 1,000 dangers and uncertainties. And she closes with these words of the Reverend Eric Cherry. Let us hold the refugee and the immigrant in prayer. May God be with you. May your grief and loss be assuaged. May the hard road you travel include spaces of rest and security. May you know your inherent worth and dignity every day of the journey. Let us pray for the people who are met along the way. May they remember how they were strangers too. May they embrace the pathways of compassion. May they recall the teachings of the prophets, and may they make room in their hearts and their homes. So may it be so. Thank you. Our opening music, America, by Neil Diamond, with inclusion. Thank you, group, and Neil Diamond for that song. We're going to light our chalice next, which is done in Unitarian congregations around the world in services, just to mark who we are. We'll share these words in just a moment after Anastasia, who is 9. Her pronouns are she and her, and she is excited about going to Boston next week to see her abuela. Please join me in the words on the screen. In the light of truth and the warmth of love, we gather to seek, to sustain, and to share. In the affirmation of our community, how we strive to be together in here and out there. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek truth and love, and to help one another. Let's take just a moment to say hi to your neighbor. Keep in mind, some of us are still wearing masks, some are not. Be respectful of space. And just greet your neighbor. Maybe say hi to someone you don't know. And wave to everybody online. Is that Louisa? Hey, hey. Whoops. That was almost a good callback. Thank you. Before COVID, that was always one of my favorite parts of the service, and I'm glad that we can return to it just a little bit. So please stay after for conversation and beverages and some snacks to get to know us, and please return more than once. We have a wide variety of speakers and topics, and yet they all relate back to our faith, how we want to be in the world based on our principles and our values. So whether it's our minister, or it's today it's a local organization, or it's one of our own members sharing their thoughts, you'll find something unique, I think, every week, and hopefully it brings meaning to your life. So, thank you. We're going to take time now for sharing of joys and concerns. This is another tradition in Unitarian congregations. And until they get too big, we're going to keep doing it in person. But you're welcome to come forward to the mic to share a joy or concern. I'm going to allow you the option of moving your own stone. If you'd like, that can let people know that you might like some follow-up afterwards. And because I always forget to move them anyway, so I'm putting the burden out there now. So let's take a moment to listen actively to our members and guests that are sharing.
I'm Paula Despang, and I had the best time this week. On Monday, I drove to St. Augustine, and I spent the remainder of Monday and all day Tuesday with 2 of my nieces, who they both live in St. Augustine, but not together. That's something else. But they're great gals, and I just love them to pieces. And we had some real good girl talk. As you can well imagine, it's what women do when we get together. And then Wednesday morning, before I came home, I stopped to see a friend of mine who also lives in St. Augustine. So I added another couple of hours to the fun and the delights of visiting in person with people I haven't seen in several years. So a good time was had by all.
Paula told us yesterday she's the cool aunt. Joey Cole, I have one small one, although it seems huge to me. This Thursday, I start my 78th year on this earth. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm still healthy, I'm still getting around, and I'm so happy to be a part of this group. Thank you.
Yay.
Hi, I'm Miek. I've been volunteering with Pastoral, and by the way, I didn't get this cleared before, so. I've been volunteering with Pastoral Committee for years. I've lost track. And there's times when that's unpleasant and uncomfortable and other words. There's times when it's sad, but if we weren't there, if we weren't helping them, they would be alone at times. So we can comfort them and help them. So even though it's painful sometimes, in the end, I think we make a difference. That's all I wanted to say.
My name is Karen, and I wanted to share both a joy and concern. So I'll share with the joy. I have a sister who is his cool aunt. She taught him that it is more important to get the highest bounce when you're on the tube outside, and since they couldn't get that, they went and sat on the tube backwards, so now he's teaching everybody else. Great. Love her. Actually, I totally adore her. And it was such a joy that she just kind of rerouted her. You're not teaching that? Good. Okay. You could. And so she rerouted her trip to come. She was in Miami on a trip with her husband and kind of rerouted. So that was a nice 24 hours, and we had another 24 hours with our family in Sarasota. So it's been a good time. I just have a little concern. Okay, maybe next time he'll teach people how to do that. But I have a concern of some of our city leaders making some, I feel, missteps with the city of Orlando. I just read in the news that the Orlando Eye is allowing people to have play guns that they
What?
can shoot at targets down
Oh.
from the Orlando Eye. And I just think that's, I understand the need to kind of build your revenue, but we're making some really missteps in Orlando. So just a concern that businesses kind of really think through some of their ways to improve revenue. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I had not heard that, and we'll, yeah. So, that one deserves a stone, yes. So let's take a moment of silence, please, to honor those joys, mostly, that we've heard this morning, the concerns of our larger community and those that are kept in our hearts, and decide what kind of letter we're going to write to the city of Orlando. All right, let's welcome back, fresh from vacation, raring to go, Miss Judith Stein-Farrell for our Time for All Ages, our Director of Religious Education.
Awesome. Now I don't have to do the whole introduction of who I am. It was kind of a vacation. It was a retreat with a bunch of other... Yeah, that was a workcation. A retreat with a bunch of other religious educators from the southeast district region of the country, and a couple people from other spots, because it was soul-filling and it was awesome. And if you've not been to the Mountain Retreats and Learning Center up in Highlands, North Carolina, I highly recommend it. Plus, they've got children's camp during the summer for kids and youth, and I highly recommend sending your kids, because it's also a soul-filling event. And the food it's camp, it's high-end, better camp food than I remember camp food to be, at any rate. So for those of you, and I see a lot of new faces in here this morning, and I'm so excited. My name is Judith Stein-Farrell. As Martha said, I am the Director of Religious Education here. That means that I talk to you a lot about principles and what we believe and where we get our beliefs from, as does Reverend Tracy and our service leaders, and that's kind of why you're here. So, my pronouns are she, her, hers, and I forgot to put my badge on today. But it generally says, ask me my pronouns, so if you want practice doing that, you can come up to me and practice asking people what their pronouns are, because I'm a safe space. I understand there are a couple of newbies here this morning who want some information, and after service I will try and find you. I'm going to be in the back with the kids most of the next half of the service, so afterwards I'll come up and give you information. If not, my card's up front. I'm going to tell a story today around the topic of hospitality, first principle, the inherent worth of dignity of all people, the third principle, acceptance of one another, and encouragement in spiritual growth, and our sixth principle, the goal of world community, right? Which is sort of what our topic is today. This story comes from Middle Eastern Islamic folk tales that are particularly, that are different in different communities, but are known in Turkey and Syria. It's about a young man named Mullah Nasruddin, if I'm pronouncing it properly, or Nasruddin. He'd been working, it was Ramadan, and if you all don't know, Ramadan this year was April 1st to May 1st, so it's passed. And do you all know what you do, what happens during Ramadan? I know Paula does. Do our kids know what happens during Ramadan? Ethan? During the day, one of the things, I mean, it's a very important religious holiday in the Islamic community, but they do not, the folks who practice do not and observe, do not eat meals after sunrise or before sunset. So all day long they're going about their daily chores without food. Mullah Nasruddin had been working all day in the fields, and he was tired and sweaty, and his clothes and shoes were covered with mud and stains because he'd been fasting all day long for Ramadan. He was also very hungry. But finally it was almost sundown, and he knew that he would soon be able to eat. The wealthiest man in the community had invited everyone from town to his house to break their fasts in his home that evening. Nasruddin realized that if he went home, changed clothes, washed up, he was going to be late for the event. So he just went directly to, better to arrive in dirty clothes and not get there and be part of the gathering. What a party it would be, he thought. What a feast. And he started looking forward to all the foods he would be eating. The lentils, the chickpeas, the bread, the hummus, the falafel, the chicken, the beef, and best of all, the desserts. The halva, the date rolls, the figs, the baklava. The kids know what baklava is. Oh, it's sweet. So when he got there, the wealthy man opened the door, and he saw Nasruddin standing there in his dirty clothes. And he just kind of looked at him. He said, "Come on in," turned around and walked away. Was that very nice? It was kind of rude. I wonder what the wealthy man was thinking. Any ideas? No thoughts on that? I see, Anna, yes. Maybe he was thinking the guy went to the wrong place, maybe. So let's hear what happens next. Nasruddin joined the throngs of people who were gathering and dressed in their finest clothes and went to the tables that were laden with all sorts of foods, and nobody was making room for him to get to the table. Everybody was gathering and getting, but there were, you know how you sometimes gather around a table, then someone walks up and you say, "Oh, okay, let's move over, come on in, get some food." No one was doing that. So he found himself having to say, "Excuse me, pardon me, get in, find a plate," get nudged around. Then he sat down to eat, and he didn't feel very much like eating because he wasn't feeling very welcome. So he turned around and he put his plate down and he ran out and went home. And he changed into his finest coat, finest clothing. And then he showed up, went back to the feast. And everyone went, "Hi!" and started paying attention to him and saying, "Come and eat." And he went up to the tables and he started feeding his coat and putting the food in his pockets and, in his top pocket and in his side pockets. And people started to look at him. And the guests started looking at him. I wonder what they were thinking. What do you think you'd be thinking? Yeah, what is going on? Yes, Anna? Is he trying to steal everything? Say that again? Do you think he really was, though? No. He fed the coat lentils and chickpeas and olives and bread and hummus and falafel and chicken and beef and all those great desserts. The baklava. Obviously, I like baklava. Nasruddin became silent because people started watching his strange behavior, and soon everyone in the room was staring at him, wondering what he was doing. And the host hurried over and he said, "Whatever are you doing? Why are you feeding your coat like that?" He said, "Well," replied Nasruddin, "when I first got here to this feast in my old farming clothes, I wasn't welcome. No one would speak to me. No one would help me get to the table. No one welcomed me. So I realized it was not me that was welcome. It was my clothing. So I'm feeding my clothing." What do you think the host and other guests might have felt when they heard that? Embarrassed, yeah. How we treat people, is it about what they're wearing and what they do? Inherent worth and dignity of all people means we treat all people, understanding they all have inherent worth and dignity. Acceptance of one another as they are now, and encouragement in spiritual growth means feeding them and helping them. The goal of world community is welcoming us all together. And that is your time for all ages today.
Thank you for a fun story. Something to think about. Wait, I got something here from online. I thought there were no... Now I can't make my phone big, Mayek and Kelly. I can't read it. So I'll let them read it later. I'm sorry, online crew. Maybe I can do that. What are you doing? Please send to Kelly. Okay. We have our interlude and offering this morning. Sorry for that little snafu. I'm having phone trouble. So we try to connect our online members who can't be here in person as part of the room, and sometimes it's difficult. So we're sharing our plate today with the Orlando Center for Justice, who is actually our speaker and will be our share the plate for this whole quarter. So let's be quiet and listen to Sunny and Janet.
Stand with me, the homeless.
What a treat. Do we know, we don't have music yet, do we, instrumental for our Singing the Children Out. So let's just try it again. We're going to get better at this. There are the words. We love you and bless you and send you on your way. We love you and bless you today and every day. All right, they're almost there. We don't need to sing it twice. Why don't you come up here for just a moment and do it? And as Karen said, we should always have somebody in the audience, not me. Well, usually it's not a problem.
We just have one joy from our online group. It's from Evelyn, but she wanted to mention that yesterday was Beth Kiefer's birthday.
Oh.
So
Is Beth online?
I don't know if Beth is online, but Beth, if you're there, happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Beth. That's exciting. Well, it's my privilege now to introduce our speaker this morning, Mr. Jose Marantes. He is part of the development team at the Orlando Center for Justice and an excellent executive assistant to the executive director, Melissa Marantes, who is probably his wife. So he has worked with immigration and refugees for a long time. He used to work at the Hope Center, Community Center in Apopka, which is another wonderful organization we participate with, and we're looking forward to hearing from him this morning. So welcome, Jose.
Thank you. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Well, I'm Jose Luis Marantes. He, him, él are my pronouns, and I'm just so excited to be here with you all. This is my first time, actually, ever sitting in a Unitarian Universalist space, and it just feels so welcome, so grateful. My boss is actually a Unitarian Universalist, and I sent her a message, and I said, "Oh, I'm here with your people today." And then it took 10 minutes. I'm like, "Scratch that. I'm with my people today." That's how I felt, right? And she's like, and so I just wanted to say thank you. It's just a blessing to be here. I volunteer and support at the Orlando Center for Justice, and I got a lot I want to share with you today, but I also would love to open space for us to have a conversation, right? And for you to ask your questions and engage, and I'll stick around actually after as well to further engage and talk about this. But a little bit about the Orlando Center for Justice. I'm very proud of this organization. Not just because my wife works there, but I'm also I really think that I love it when organizations see a need and decide to meet it, right? And this is really an organization that was founded by 3 women, 3 attorneys who were noticing a major gap showing up in Central Florida when it came to serving and providing legal representation to immigrant populations and populations who frankly don't have always access to an attorney. If you've ever seen Law and Order, you have a right to an attorney. Not everyone gets that right fulfilled. And seeing that gap, seeing also legal services shrink, meanwhile, working in a country and in an administration that was escalating enforcement, you have a major gap, right? This is a battle that was not going to be won on the streets, but more on the courts. And in fact, it was better. It made more sense whether or not did you have an attorney versus if you had a poster, right, or a sign at a march at this point. That's really the transition. And they came in and started this organization to respond to that need. And more importantly, I want to also just send some gratitude from them for seeing their work and seeing the work of Orlando Center for Justice for your contribution. Also, Luisa, I'm not sure if she's here today, but just, hey, Luisa, thank you so much. I know Luisa is a close member of your community and also has been supporting Orlando Center for Justice and kind of made this bridge. So we're just so grateful to all of you. All right, let's jump into this. A little bit about myself. So I'm Jose Luis again. I'm a son of Cuban immigrants. My parents came here on multiple migrations, and they also came as children. So my mom came when she was 7, and she came in a plan that was called the Flights of Liberty. And this was a program in the early 70s that was helping people get free flights out of Cuba to arrive here. My father came in as a 16-year-old, 15-year-old kid in a boat lift called Mariel. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Those who don't know, if you've ever seen the first scene of Scarface, there it is. That's Mariel. And he would have probably been an extra in that one. I'm going to bring humor into our presentation because this is a tough topic. So just, you don't have to laugh at all the jokes, though. All right, anyway. But the point is, my father and my mom came in as kids, and they met as teens in Miami, and here I am. And what I notice is that I am a product of the survival of migration, of children migration, and because of their sacrifice, because of the sacrifice of my grandparents, I now get to have a family. I get to have kids who I bought shoes for yesterday and are not worried or thinking about where they're going to get food tomorrow or whether or not they can get their door knocked, right, and be concerned that this could be immigration or something else. This is a reality, right, that many immigrants, especially those who arrive here, and are either in process or have not been able to get immigration status. And so I took that journey and paid it forward. And in fact, I found myself, really was my best friend in college. His name is Francisco, who he was from Colombia. And he comes, actually, his name, we call him Pacho, right? Because that's kind of what you call Francisco in Colombia. And Pacho and I were going to go plan a trip to go to Miami to have, just kind of party or have a good time. And he said, I can't go. And he came out to me as undocumented. He told me that he didn't have the papers and had to keep it playing safe. And that's what really drove me into this issue. As a Cuban American, I have had privilege, right? There's a privilege that happens due to the way the laws were set up, in which that experience would not be the same for me or for my family as it was for other people from all over the world. And that really also opened me up to an issue I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with. It's called the DREAM Act, or DACA, it's sometimes also referred to. This is really a policy that was a great idea that's a pathway to citizenship for young people. There's always this trouble, right? Most of us here are adults, and we'll make decisions and choices in our lives for all the reasons we have to. But I often like to think that my kids should not be harmed because of my choices, right? That they should not also bear the burden of a choice they couldn't make. And it was a logical idea that young people, kids, if you brought here at the age of 2, you have no way of knowing whether you can stay or do things the legal way or whatever it may be. That's not an access choice for you. And my heart was moved by that cause and issue. So that's a little bit about me. That's kind of what I do, and part of why I serve at the Orlando Center for Justice is really to extend that work and to kind of pay that forward. A little bit, I want to kind of talk to you about kind of what we're dealing with right now and kind of the moment we're in, okay? Because we are in another tricky time, right? And even though I was very hopeful to see a new administration maybe be more open or more welcoming to immigrants, what we're finding more and more is that what may happen federally may not always transition to what's happening at the local or state level. In fact, that there is a gap, and in fact, quite a debate that unfortunately is happening at the expense of people's lives. And right now, in preparation for this, one of the things that I know my colleague John Berry came here last year. Attorney John Berry came from the Orlando Center for Justice and spoke to you all a bit about the unaccompanied minors issue and young people being brought here without their parents arriving here. So I wanted to give you a little bit of an update because we're in a bit of a tricky time because in our state there was a recent executive order passed by the governor that basically was requiring all state agencies to report names of any immigrant it's serving. This also include every shelter or place that's caring for young immigrants that are kids, right? And in fact, unaccompanied minors, when they arrive here, are often put into either a foster care or in some kind of a shelter situation while their legal immigration process is being resolved. Well, this executive order created a pretty big problem. And part of the problem that it created was that as a result of it, it kind of created a situation where the Department of Children and Family in our state was left with a problem of basically having to deny access to young immigrant kids And if you think about this, right, like, I don't know if we have any folks who work in the medical profession, or if you've work with someone who's like, there's kind of this idea of like you do no harm, you treat people. Like there's something that just overrides these things. And I imagine if you're a social worker, or if you work with kids, there's no kind of kid. Does that make sense? They're all kids, right? There's a certain level where, hey, we're not gonna create any kind of division of who can get supported and who doesn't. Well, this has created a situation where we had about only 5 shelters who would be allowed young kids to have access to those shelters while they're awaiting their immigration. 2 of them have been shut down, and now all the Department of Children and Family shelters are basically moving to deny housing immigrant young kids in those places in our own state at this time. Now, didn't we all hear, like, what were the images that we saw a couple of years ago, right? When we saw young people arriving at the border. Anybody remember some of them? We had them in cages, right? Now, who was, I don't know, you know what I mean? When we think about the agency that's putting them in cages, in this case was the federal government, right? Now, here's what's interesting. The state is the one that has the resources and the system to care for kids in a more wraparound and full way, right? That's why Department of Children and Family is not run by our federal government. One of the ways in which these kids would get help is that instead of them being put in a cage or a facility or in some kind of a children prison scenario, they can go into a home. One of the most devastating things that happen to a young person when they arrive here is the separation of family and not having that warmth, right? So now, as a result of this, the system that would approve those kids to be able to go into foster care has a block. Meaning the federal government is stepping in to resolve the problem, but what option does the federal government only have at its disposal? These very facilities that are basically kind of really putting kids apart, not connected to community, not connected to family. So I'm painting this picture for you because we are in a moment where, you know, all laws can be passed and some laws have a real logic to them. And there was a logic for this law, right? The law was, like the executive order was in essence moved because what they wanted to do was addressing of a young man who had done a violent crime. And this young man had done a violent crime, and this sort of, you ever had the scenario of like the one rotten apple, right? Like kind of messes up the whole pile. And so this is actually an older, younger kid, it was like 17, 18, had this violent incident, and then they built this whole policy to resolve for that to never to happen. Well, the kids who are getting caught in the dragnet of this are 3 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. These aren't people, right, who are in this situation, right? And so, and regardless of that, we should have a clear value around this. So, anybody, did I paint the picture of kind of where we're at? Is that kind of, okay, cool, we're here. All right, a couple things I want to just lift up before we go. Because I've been an organizer for my whole career prior to, you know, being executive assistant to my executive assistant, AKA my wife. I've been at the front lines of this work, working with undocumented students. I've led protests led by undocumented young people all over the country. I've done this work and I've seen this when young people and communities come together, change can happen. And I really believe that that is still true today. And I want to name that there is opportunity and that there is hope. Part of the hope for me here is I don't have a lot of hope towards changing the hearts and minds of folks who are definitively chosen a political stance to a human right issue. When you politicize the human rights, we are in a problem. We're off the road of centering people. And so we are in a place now where there was, when I think about, I asked the team at the Orlando Center for Justice, what can we do? What can we do to address this issue? So for one, I wanted to make sure that I shared to you the whole picture, because we often only get the headlines. We only get the little line, bad, good, in, out, but it's complex. So I think it's important that we inform ourselves, because the more informed we are, the more we can have conversations with other people. The other thing that we want to make sure is that these kinds of policies or executive orders that are being moved by our current governor and our current state policymakers, the check to that is the courts. And actually, I don't know if you've been to the ballot box recently, but sometimes you see a bunch of stuff there that I don't even know who to vote for. I kind of only know one or two. But it's important to be thinking about who is going to be staying in our Supreme Courts. So I want you to just kind of bring this to your mind, because that really is the check to these kinds of things. But more importantly, how do we communicate to our state reps and our state senator and let them know there are communities that are watching? Because often these things happen in the dark. They happen in the shadows. And really, it gives no leverage to advocates like the Orlando Center for Justice to be able to move when people in power are unaware that these problems are taking place. We have there's a young woman named Anna, and Anna is 14 now. But Anna was brought here from I don't know if you're familiar with like the Central American kind of triangle. You have a situation where Guatemala and Honduras and a lot of countries, like they've had an uptick in like violence. Anna's mom kind of abandoned them, like just basically left, and then left Anna with Dad. Now Anna and Dad were living as best as they could, but at some point they needed to go. The violence was too big. And so Dad and Anna decided to make the trek up to the US, to come to America. And they did. And they arrived. And they got the processing, and they applied for political asylum. And while that process was happening, our pandemic hit. And Anna's dad passed away. And that's really difficult, because now Anna's, you got to picture this for a moment. Anna's in the hospital, watching her dad pass. The neighbor took her. And now Dad passes and Mom's not there. Anna has no other family here. And this paperwork is being processed. What does Anna do? Where does Anna go? And now you're in a state that is basically saying, Anna can't even go here because we can't serve you because we may lose funding if we do X, Y, Z. Or, you know, who do we call? Right? If we call this agency, will they be reporting to immigration something, and then Anna, instead of getting help, is getting harmed? Or maybe put in a situation. What does Anna do? Well, Anna, thank God, or thank the universe, thank heaven, thank the Spirit, found someone. I could say that, I can go like 14 times, right? Like all of the different energies. I love being here. This is awesome. Anna's neighbor knew someone at the Orlando Center for Justice. And they called, and Anna got representation. That representation allowed for Anna's case to continue. But one of the things that happens when you don't have parents is that you're either going to go into the system or somebody takes custody over you. And that neighbor was ready to take custody. Because of OCJ, they were able to get Anna not only just representation to continue to get her paperwork. She's about a couple of months away to get her permanent residency. But she now has a new home. And a family around her. That's the work that the Orlando Center for Justice is trying to do. And I wanted to lift that up because it is the kind of work that, it's the stuff that happens that really makes the difference for that life. See, somebody had a wild idea that maybe we should pass a policy that can allow kids to leave the island of Cuba during political turmoil. And as a result of that policy, my mom was able to get on a plane and arrive to New York and make a home here and meet some cool Cuban guy at a club. And then I'm here talking to you awesome people and then eventually going somewhere else. That reality only happens when people come together to bring solutions rather than problems. And so I want to encourage everybody to keep conscious of this issue, keep talking about this, get involved, and there are ways in which you can support the Orlando Center for Justice. Number one, we welcome volunteers. So if you want to support, help at orlandojustice.org, and we'll share that information. The person on the helpline, her name is Rotzi. Sorry, I just have to say this. Rotzi is basically the name Hector backwards, and I just think that's amazing. I told you I'll bring some jokes. All right, but that is actually how you would spell her name. So just think of Hector backwards, and Rotzi and then we are looking for 3 types of volunteers. Yeah, you got it, right? Brother over here is thinking about it. He's like, oh, I think, yeah, that's right. We are looking for volunteers we have an English ESL class, so we're always looking for speaking volunteers. We are also looking for opportunities for, we need to find more services and wraparound services and updating our lists. And we just finished, like 2 weeks ago, we had an Immigrant Appreciation Day where the city declared 2 weekends ago Immigrant Appreciation Day. And we're going to start centering the immigrant community, and so we always have wonderful events to show up to. So that's what I prepared for you all. I want to open it up for questions, comments, engagement, but that's it. Yeah.
Hold on, I got the microphone.
Yeah.
So, not to ask a question. I saw Paula's hand first.
Where is your office's
Yeah.
facilities, whatever, are located?
Absolutely. We're off of Cimarron, right in between Colonial and University. So there's like a little, right there next to Dunkin' Donuts.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Just delightful to meet you, and thank you for your work, as well as your executive director. But I did want to ask about the challenge between federal rights, state rights. When you said that, I got a little muddy in my brain about how that works. So if I'm understanding, is the immigrant places that have these supports, once they report them, then their funding gets cut? Is that what is happening?
Yeah, thanks for the clarifying question. So here's basically what took place. The executive order created a mandate. All state public institutions have to submit and report to the state any immigrant that they're serving, the name, information, all that stuff, which is in and of itself a bit of a problem. A big problem. Number 2, the other thing was that this executive order, any state-funded agency that was funded by DCF could no longer house like immigrants that are in the refugee system or process. Those people needed to be housed then by the federal government, not the state. So it also created a situation where frontline workers, folks who are doing kind of the work of social work and engaging these folks, are now being barred from doing these kinds of services at the risk of losing state funding. That doesn't necessarily mean that they can't say, fine, we'll keep serving, which is part of what OCJ is trying to do, is to educate even our local agencies to not get spooked by these policies and not keep doing the work that they're going to do. So there's complexity there, but that's pretty much how this plays out. Yeah.
So they're trying to make these agents the agents of the state?
That is a way it rolls out at times. Yeah.
I just wanted to say to all of you, be very generous in your donations the next 3 months, because our Share the Plate is going to the Orlando Justice Center.
Thank you.
Now, the executive order you just mentioned, that was a state order, right?
Correct.
Because in our state, our executive does not believe that the federal government is rightfully enforcing the laws that they should be. So we're trying to do that here, which is why that controversy comes
It's
up.
part of it's also part of the controversy, and also what is done. There's more to it. I wanted to kind of keep it focused, but there is another element to this, which is there was a policy called 287G, which is basically a policy that would require state police to cooperate with Immigration Customs Enforcement. So what it does is that it de facto turns state police into reporters to immigration. So that kind of division that is super important in our local public safety gets really muddied, because what the actual collateral damage of that is immigrant communities will refuse and or not engage with public safety for the fear of being permanently reported, and that's not effective public safety, right? Immigration's got plenty of resources to do their job, and they can do what they got to do. But once the local officer is in that same obligation, then it creates a whole nother dynamic that is not good for all of our public safety, let alone for immigrants themselves.
My understanding from reading the paper was, and I'm a former social worker in the child welfare field, they were actually denying licenses.
That's it.
And so it's not a matter of just funding. I think that's important. It's a matter of you can't do anything legally in the state if you don't have a license.
Correct.
correct?
You are 100% correct.
Okay. The other thing I just add to that is recent editorial in the Sentinel in terms of the judges. We probably need to vote no on all the Supreme Court judges because they're all Federalists, or at least check them out. Most of them are.
Thank you for that.
Yeah,
That's
voting
important
is
information.
incredibly important.
It's incredibly important, but the point, in your name? Barbara. The point that Barbara's making, I think, is critical because at this time, I'll tell you this, like once the last administration came into power, I was in a strategy meeting with a lot of immigrant advocates and organizers, and we're like, what are we going to do? We knew, especially if you remember the Muslim ban, you remember all these different issues, we were going to go on full defense. But the one thing that was the unifying strategy was we need more and more legal representation, and we need to take a hold of what's happening in the courts, because that's probably the place where people will get the most relief, because we can't count on Congress to pass comprehensive reforms, and instead what we're seeing are more and more unscrupulous kind of enforcements coming forward.
Any other questions now? He is going to stay around, so I'm sure that more will come up. But thank you.
All right.
Thank you
Thank you
very,
all.
very much. If you'll help me extinguish the chalice with these words on the screen. The fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. All those things are much needed. Let's enjoy our closing music, Living in the Promised Land by David Lynn Jones, popularized by Willie Nelson.
Actually, we're doing a couple, we're going to do that next.
We're going to do that
Right,
next.
we're going to do.
We're going to have a little medley.
That's going
A prelude of the postlude? No. I'm going to sit down and we shall enjoy whatever we hear next.
Gotcha, my bad.
postlude. Okay. All right. It's wonderful to have all this music again. It'll just take us a little while we get used to it. So my closing words this morning are from David Hicks McPherson, The Lifelong Goal. To wish for compassion, to pray for courage, to experience doubt, to bear sorrow, to strive for sureness. All these are qualities for which each of us should be grateful. But to feel a genuine fellowship for the whole human family, to act so that our empathy is evident wherever we go, that's the object. That's the lifelong goal. So, thank you. Let's get some coffee and conversation and,
We need everybody to sing
oh,
with
and more
us.
music for the
They
postlude.
got to sing with us.
They got to sing with us. Oh, they want us to sing. Oh.
We need your help.
Are we singing the good words? Okay, we'll see. Stand as you're willing and able and sing along. Sing away from for you and me. Well.
More verses, but we thought you might get tired of hearing it.
Thank you. Thank you. It's something we all know and love, or used to love,